Number 1, you guys remember the definition of percent. Percent means, cent means 100. Percent, right? So something out of 100, then this something should be the percent, okay? All right, so let's just read this to this decimal, 5/10. Didn't do anything, 5/10. So you have a fraction. If you simplify it, you will have fraction version of 5/10. So now I'm going to change this to something out of 100. To do this, what number you need to multiply on the top and the bottom? You need to do times by 10 times by 10. So it's going to be 50. So this number on the top will be the percentage. Okay, so now I'm going to give you the shortcut because something out of 100 is not always working. So another way to solve this is, so let's say 5/10 is actually same as 50% as you just got. And how you change this to percentage by moving decimal. So let's look at the decimal. Decimal is right in front of 5. But decimal here, it's right behind 0 because 50 is 50.0. It's the same thing, okay? But we just ignore this because it's too obvious, right? So now, how many times you need to move a decimal from here to here? 1 and 2, right? So you have to move decimal 1 and 2. All right, so now I'm going to move 1, 2, and there's an empty spot here, right? So if you see empty spot, you have to fill in with 0. So it's going to be 50%. So now here, how many times do you need to move a decimal to change it to percent? Twice. 1, 2. So it's right behind 5. So the answer is going to be 45.2%. Okay, so what about 1/10? 1/10, I'll use a first strategy. This is a first strategy. You should be able to do both. 1/10. So something out of 100. So now what? Times by 10 times by 10. So it's going to be 10. So it's going to be 10%. If you want to use a second strategy, let's try to use it. So now I'm going to move a decimal twice to the right to find the percent, but there's an empty spot here, so you have to fill in 0. So it's going to be 10%. So now let's just use the same strategy. You move a decimal twice to the right, so it's going to be right behind 8. So the answer is going to be 478%. Because decimal is behind here, behind 8, but it's still a whole number. So we're going to talk about proportion. So definition of proportion is an equation. So it has equal sign and number and numbers, stating that two ratios, we already know the ratio, just comparison of two numbers. Two ratios are equivalent. So two quantities that forms a proportion are, it's called proportional. So for example, the proportion is rated 2 to 3. I have 2 to 3. And if I have 4 to 6, and 4 to 6 actually, if it's simplified, it's going to be 2 to 3. So I can say those twos are equivalent, right? Equivalent. Both has equal value. Equal value. That means equivalent. So this is the example. So 2 to 3 is equal to 4 to 6. So this is proportion. When you have two ratio, and ratio, if they are same value when they are simplified or not simplified, and when they're simplified, if it's equal, then we can call them what? Proportion. So proportion, you need two ratios. So number 1, tell whether 6 to 4 and 8 to 12 forms a proportion. So you have to, the first thing you need to do is you need to compare the simplest form. So compare, so 6 to 4, let's say 6 to 4 and 8 to 12 is going to be equivalent. Okay, so 6 to 4. So if you divide it by 2, it's going to be 3 to 2. And what about this? If you divide it by 4, it's going to be 2 over 3. Do you think those are equivalent? 2 over 3, 3 over 2? They're not equal, right? So forms a proportion? No, it's not a proportion. Copy it down. $5 for 2 boxes, $7.5, $7.50 per 3. So let's just compare the unit rate because we already know how to find the unit rate, right? Unit rate. What about like for 2 boxes? How much is it per 1 box? $2, and you just divide it by 2, $2.50. What about the unit price of 3 boxes here? So per 1 box, how much is it? $7.50 divided by 3. So it's going to be 2, 6, and 15. You put decimal here, 15 and 0. So it's going to be $2.50 per 1 box. We do have same unit price. So what do you think? Do you think this is fair? And do you think this makes equivalent ratios? Right? We have two same ratios, which means this forms a proportions. This is a proportion, okay? So 5 to 2 and 7.5 to 3, it makes proportion. So you just tell if it's proportion or not proportion for this unit. Number 1/2 is already simplified. What about 5/10? 1/2, if it's simplified, right? 1/2 and 1/2, they're equivalent, right? So 1/2 and 5/10, it is a proportion. I'm going to just put P for proportion. And 4 to 6, it's going to be 2 to 3. 18 to 24, how can it be simplified? Divided by 6, divided by 6. If you can start dividing by 2. That's going to be 3 over 4. Do you think this is equivalent? No. So it's not proportion. What about number 3? This is already simplified. Do you think they're equivalent? They are not equivalent. Because when you compare simplest form, then you don't need to worry about like, oh, what if it's going to be same? No, if the simplest form, then if it's not exactly same, then it's not forming the proportion. It's not a proportion. And this is not simplified, so you have to simplify both. Divided by 5 and divided by 5. That's going to be 5 over 4. And divided by 3. So 5 over 4, those are equivalent. So it's a proportion. So these two ratios forms a proportion. These two ratio, it's just two ratios. It's not forming proportion. All right, tell whether x and y are proportional. So when we have two variables, you compare the ratios for each data, x over y, x over y, x over y, x over y. So you have to compare everything. 1 over 12, 2 over 24, 4 to 48, because we were talking about the ratio, 6 to 72. Are they simplest form? No, we have to except this one, you need to change everything to simplest form. So divided by 2, 1 over 12, divided by 4, Oh, it's 1 over 12. But you never know. You need to check every single data. Divided by 6, 1 over 12. 1 over 12, 1 over 12, 1 over 12, and 1 over 12. They all have equivalent ratio. Same when it's simplified. So you can say the variable x and y's are proportional. It is proportional. When you're talking about between the variables, you use adjective. Those x and y's are proportional. When x when it's doubled, y is going to be doubled. When it's tripled, it's going to be tripled. All right, copy it down.